Christ is risen. I'm very happy to be here on this bright week of Paschal, and would like very much to share with you some of the very important things that I feel is needed we should be reminded of. And I've just learned the following thing, and I want to tell you so that you know. In Optina monastery, this Paschal, there occurred a murder. There was a man or two men arrived, because of lots of people, Paschal and so on, and they attacked, somehow bullied and attacked one of the higher monks, or by the name of Basil, Father Philip, you put down on your list, who was stabbed to death. And then they went to the belfry, and there were two monks, Father Trophimus and Theraphantes. They were bell ringers, and they killed them too. And this Father Vasily was taken to the hospital. On the way, he was saying, "Oh Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy," and he died. And it turned out to be they received Holy Communion, passed the Holy Communion, and then they were killed. Now, this evidently is not a rare case, because recently, a couple of years ago, they were killed 3 priests, Father Alexander Men and 2 other monks, priest monks. This unrighteousness is going on there. Of course, here in the free world is also a lot of that ungodliness and quite sort of popular. In every city there are murders, dissatisfaction, violence, and various forms of unrighteousness. And although it is bright Paschal period, and I'd like very much to say nice things, but I think it is important for us to keep in mind that this thing going on, that is, that unrighteousness is alive and active. The talk that I was told to give today is bound up with phenomena which seems to be rare nowadays. Lovers of God, of truth, or people who consciously follow and are aware of the whole phenomenon of being right, or righteous, godly, godliness. And this, we feel, in our society, is actually rapidly disappearing. Simply because there are so many conflicting ideas, and everybody sort of has a right to adhere to them, and therefore there seems to be no one criteria. There's no measuring stick of what is right, what is wrong. And for that reason, the young generation is exposed to a whole variety of conflicting, opposing ideas, many of them actually very dangerous ideas, for which you're supposed to sit in prison and put your electric chair, but they put that in the air and it becomes fashionable. In fact, the fascination with sin, death, murder, all these deadly things which are constantly presented in our novels, in magazines, in movies, in theaters, and it's almost a fashion to discuss this. People make it into entertainment, and now the recent one is that, at least in the past, they would make believe that they're shooting. The cowboys going and shooting people down, fall down. But now they're put on through television. They film actual war scenes, and that's used as entertainment. In other words, there's something going on very much wrong with sort of a normality of society. Now, we will not delve into that sort of negativism, because we all know it and it's negative and so on, from Christian point of view. But if you do not adhere to Christianity, to this concept, what is right and what is wrong, then why not? If If you're going to get away with it, you get satisfaction, why not? Kill them off, big deal. We feel, we Christians, and we sort of old Christians, in the sense that our religion comes straight from Christ's time, apostolic times. It is time of straight from that time and that literature which still exists that touched Jesus. That very antiquity, that it leads straight to Jesus Christ, is very dear to us, very important. We pay much attention to it. The catacomb period of Christianity is considered the most important period because it shaped humanity and gave the model which we all follow. So this ancient image of righteousness is very important to us. And so here I want to say three things. What is righteousness? What is lovers? What's such a phenomenon of lovers of truth? What do you mean by that? We have lovers of sport, lovers of cinematography, lovers of fashions, and so on. But what does it mean, lovers of truth? It's meant we as Christians have models that comes down to all the way to Old Testament. And in Old Testament we have a whole series of these exceedingly interesting phenomena. These men and women who lived for the love of God to such an extent that they would give up everything, go into the woods and into the deserts like St. Elias and Moses and so on, and there encounter God. Moses spoke to God. And the rest of all of those righteous ones, they were, or like Job, who endured all kinds of misfortunes, sort of God. He kept on testing him so unfairly, and he kept on enduring it. He was in such a pain and discomfort that his wife, the closest person, seeing how he suffered, he says, "Why don't you curse God and get rid of him and drop dead? He'll be through with all your and his friends said the same thing. And he, being a righteous man, loving the truth, he said, "Why should I? God gave me everything, and then he decided to take away. Well, blessed is the name of the God." That's his business. I was very fortunate that I was very nice. God smiled at me and so on. But then he took it away from me. Still God. I still love him. Still is all I have, the most important thing, because I love him. And nothing changes. And I endure. Of course, it's painful, but I endure. So these Old Testament heroes are important for us to sort of see as models. And the New Testament is nothing else than a reenactment, so to speak, of the same type of psychology. These people who loved, who met Jesus, were moved. Some of them are people who were in love with sin and violence and unrighteousness. And then seeing Jesus Christ, they were moved, changed, and no one forced them to do it. It's their own conscience. And then they began to love the truth. To love, second point, to love that which is considered the truth, or that which God ordained to be righteous. In our society today, in any case, in my life, I had great difficulty to find so-called pravidniki, to find righteous people. It's almost a profession. I wanted to see people who live for God. I was very much interested in people who would endure things for God, would do things for God, not for money or some gain or mostly fame, acceptance, reputation. They didn't care about that. I wanted to see people, genuine people, who cared for something which is righteous, something which is full of beauty of righteousness. And I couldn't find. There's an expression in Egypt, in Greece, ancient Greece, who was it that walked around with Yom Semyon? During the day, it was
Was it Demosthenes?
That's right. He walked around with a light during the daylight. And you look, they say, "What in the world are you doing?" He said, "I'm looking for righteous people." Because there aren't any. No, of course there are lots of righteous, good people. But they're not in love with God. They're not inspired. They're not living for a big idea. And the biggest idea is when Jesus came, that you can have direct contact with the creator of the whole universe, because he is also a person. God is a person, made us in his image. We're persons, so he's a person. So you can have direct contact with person. And if when you read about Moses, you can see that this man was, he was even a murderer, and he was deeply moved by the idea that I can have contact with God. And God made all kinds of miracles. That is, violated for the glory of his own glory, the laws of nature. The sea went apart and so on. Now, this concept of righteousness is, first of all, psychologically. A righteous man is he who deeply in his heart is convinced that there is a certain according to the dictionary, identification what is right and correct. We know, for example, that this is my right hand. If I keep on pushing right, I'll end up on the left side. So it's already limited. The concept of righteousness is already limited in that sense. What does it mean? Does it mean that there is an objective criterion, and you accept this, and sort of automatically everything will be right? No, it isn't that either. Because man is created in the image of God. God is a mystery. Therefore, it's very hard for us to really know what is pleasing to God, because we don't have the mind of God. We can sort of guess, unless he reveals. Whatever he reveals, it becomes to us that norm. But that norm is accepted or makes sense to us as long as our heart is right with it. If our heart is not right, no matter what they're going to tell me how right things are, if I don't feel it, it makes no difference. I don't care, it makes no difference. So what? Big deal. But it's the heart that determines our adherence to the concept of righteousness. Now, there is can't even read my own writing. The attitude of man towards God, when he is moved, when he is moved by the grandeur of God, is that his heart begins to express a feeling of this attraction and devotion. And devotion becomes illogical. It is because it's beyond a human, because whatever you start express in logical terms, it's not good enough, because the heart goes by a different system. So righteousness, objective righteousness, is not good enough. It has to be subjective as well. My heart has to understand it. For this reason, God sent his only begotten Son, Lord Jesus Christ, to the world, so that people, seeing the perfect man that he was, will, through their free will, accept him in their hearts, either reject or accept. And this acceptance of Jesus, who is incarnate righteousness, is the one that determines our love. In other words, to love God requires a state of devotion. That is, you love, when you love your wife, you fall in love with her. She's great. You give vows in church. Yes, until death does us part, I'll love her, and so on and so on. And she'll be absolute, I'll be dedicated to her, even though she's going to beat me, tear my beard out, I'm still going to love her. On what grounds? If she is a witch like this, beating me up, and then giving me terrible spinach dinners, why should I love her? Nowadays people lose love right away. But I accepted her in the name of Jesus Christ, who is incarnate, God and this very object of my love. Therefore, through that prism of Jesus Christ, I will love her. Because she was given to me by God. I'll accept. And she automatically becomes the most beautiful phenomenon, most inspiring thing through Jesus Christ. Nowadays, people don't have in marriages Jesus Christ, and therefore very soon they'll lose. And she comes to you and she says, darling, you're supposed to be very nice. I don't love you anymore. Well, what about all the vows? What about our kids? What about our two-car garage and all this business? What are we going to do? Then I plan to go to Bermuda with you. Then what about all that? She said, I can't help you. I don't love you anymore. Well, why? Is this anybody else? Maybe somebody else was more handsome and smart and so on. Well, frankly, no. I don't care. I just don't love you. Finished. Now, that can occur if there was no bond, no seal of Jesus Christ. The love for that righteousness of Jesus Christ was not between you and your wife. And it disappeared because there was no bond. There was that love was that towards righteousness is gone. Same thing with children. Nowadays, parents can kill their children. Even not born, they kill them off. And they seem to be fine. Somehow it doesn't seem to move them. Simply because they don't feel that the child, which is God's creature, is supposed to come, is actually God sent, God who is righteousness. It's a miracle of a human being. And the very reason why we're supposed to have children, not because they're so cute and lovely, or you expect they'll grow up and take care of me when I'll be older. No. Because they bear the image of God. Because there is God, and God wants those children to become saints, and thus supersede the amount of demons with these saints, and create paradise. We forget that. Now, the third point is that these righteous ones, those lovers of God, of truth, they, as a rule, are not interested in anything else. Or rather, everything else supports this idea of love for God. That's why when they're filled with this love for God, they get so inspired, so filled, that everything earthly sort of disappears. They don't care too much about the good dinners, to go to restaurants, and to have good cars and latest fashions and high heels and so on, because they're so dominated by the awareness of God, and they love it, that all those other values begin to disappear, and everything gets in perspective. God becomes like a tree. A tree grows straight towards God, towards sun, and the whole body of the tree is balanced to the measure of its attitude towards the sun. That's how it holds, it stays there. So same thing with us. The whole system of man upon this earth depends upon man's attitude towards, through God, through righteousness, to God. And when that encounter, when the soul encounters God and gets touched by the awareness that you are almost in a possession of the contact with the source of life itself, that awareness causes some kind of almost romantic feeling towards that element that's created. Or see, in Russian say, he who is, he who exists. And that's what they call those desert dwellers. They can go like this very Moses. He could be alone. That's Moses of the Ethiopian. He lives in the desert all alone, and he's filled. Or Mary of Egypt. Remember, for years she lived in a tiny prosper, a little bread. And she managed to go crazy on the situation she was, but she didn't. She became a great saint because God began to respond. And this is the main thing, is that a lover of God it's like an arrow towards God. It's direction towards. But then God, our God is alive, none of the dead, none of the living. He reacts. And he enters mysteriously into the life of the righteous man. And he enters in such a way, first of all, that the soul begins to feel in a language which is not necessarily, which is perhaps impossible to put in words, because it's a contact between the soul created by God and that creator who made that soul according to the way he wanted. And so it finally reaches our consciousness, our mind, our rationale, that we receive back that which we offer to God. The idea of devotion comes in. We become devoted because we feel the return love to our soul. And that can sustain us, it can endure anything. That's why these martyrs, the early Christians, they would be tormented, cut into pieces and all that, and they continued praising God. They would be crucified, and they're filled with inspiration. And then, like in Saint Marina, they took her off from they chopped her pieces into cut parts of her body, then they threw her into the dungeon, and she prayed, and she was healed. All pieces got together, and in the morning when the torturers came, she was whole. She was standing praising God. What as recent as in the Soviet Union in the 30s, they arrested these nuns and threw them into the concentration camp and forced them to work. And they said, we're not going to work for the Antichrist, for communists. We're going to work. Because we love God, we don't want to. Okay, kill us and so on. So they decided to punish them so that everybody else can see. Everybody was working zero weather. And they were forbidden to wear anything but the scars, whatever. And they stood there praying. And they were not only frozen, they felt great. God sent warmth. And they stood there the whole time while everybody was freezing, working. They just stood on their knees and prayed. They're filled with this godliness. And the thousands of people who saw that believed in God. That's testified by an American, John Noble, an American journalist or something. Later on he became a reverend in a book called I Met God in Russia. And there are, of course, many other cases where this God's reaction to the soul that loves God becomes so apparent that man wants nothing else. He's filled with that. Now, the Holy Orthodox Church preserved the blueprint how to lead a life like that. We have the whole phenomena of liturgical theology and liturgical ascetics. In other words, ascetics is study of struggle of the soul's struggle to acquire God. It's called acquisition of the Holy Spirit. And this particular various liturgical or the traditional various ways, Church preserves this blueprint of people who love God and how to lead a life that you love God, and God begins to reflect in you. God begins to dwell in you. And the term, the liturgical or hagiographical term is God-bearing fathers. You have the story lives of the saints, like he is called, if you read his life, you'll say, the life of God-bearing father Moses of Ethiopia. God-bearing father. In other words, he was so filled with this righteousness that God began to dwell in him. And there were no cases that God began to dwell in such a way that he began to manifest himself through that frail figure. He began to shine, or miracles started coming, or incense. I was just recently reading life of this elder Basiliscus of Siberia, who died in 1825, and his spiritual son testifies that often when he would start praying Jesus prayed, he used to have all-night vigils, he would say Jesus prayed, the whole-night vigil services. Then the room would be filled with undescribable aroma. And then people couldn't draw themselves away from that. It would come out of him. And later others, St. John of Kronstadt, he would come and touch, and people will be healed. Or they will be seen as in created light, or in uncreated light. Or like Archbishop John, the one who is buried right here in this city, he was seen when he was in a state of deep concentration of prayer. He was lifted up as he prayed. He was lifted up, and people saw him standing in the air. In other words, his whole even body began to be carried up by God. Now that's lover of truth, the lover of God. Bogolubive atzi, God-loving fathers, those who are so permeated with this love. Now the next thing, the second part of our lecture, is the endangered species. And that, of course, is very true term. It was given to me by a teenager who said to me, talk about something important. We young people, we punk people that present punk rock individuals, we have to understand something more concrete. Tell us, we're sort of far away from this type of life. Tell us, warn us that this phenomenon of these holy fathers is disappearing. It's true. Archbishop John died, for example. When he died, our Father Gerasim in Alaska, he wrote to us and said, I grieve every time I hear a righteous man dies, because is there anyone who would take his place? In other words, is there another one like him who would stand erect, before, like a candle before God, burning and praying for the fallen humanity? Is there another one? Well, maybe there is. We don't know. But what we know is this. The phenomena of this righteousness is in danger. I repeat. The phenomena of righteousness, righteous people, is in danger. Especially, I say, because the Orthodox Church was supposed to be the carrier of the principle of that, is nowadays, all jurisdictions put together, are too much concerned with their own status, their self-righteousness. And you know what self-righteousness is? Self-righteousness is not God's righteousness. It's when you place yourself above someone else. That you think you're elect caste. God protect every one of those God lovers. They consider themselves zilches. They're no good. They would deliberately, like that blessed Ksenia would walk around deliberately, hoping that someone would beat her up. Then throw rotten eggs at her. She would deliberately create situations when people who are not serious enough, would humble her down. She would crave for being humbled. So the righteous ones, they will never be self-righteous. And self-righteous are those who are actually of small mind. They're small people who don't, their heart isn't big. Not, the soul isn't big enough. Sort of stingy. Sort of spiritually stingy individuals. Now, the endangered, that these species are endangered, where we might lose these, is because each of us, allows evil to exist and multiply. We, as free individuals, are doing almost nothing to stop this evil to spread. I'll make it clear. Very often, people come to me and say, Farham, why am I such a zilch? Why do when I see something good, why am I silent? Why am I not coming out and say, hey, listen to that, this is great, this is holy, this is wonderful? Why am I embarrassed? And on the contrary, why, when somebody is fallen, or some kind of a filthy, dirty thing happens, why do I almost rejoice and quickly pass it tell others? You know what she did? You know what he did? Just think, immediately, and it catches. When it's ready, you don't say, just think, this woman is a saint. She did this, is wonderful. Or just tell them. No. We immediately say, oh, he's a jerk. It's clear enough, just the way he says, just the way he feels. Well, it's obvious. Do you know he's a jerk? Do you know? It means a telephone. We have friends who are, some of my nuns are great at that. They immediately call. Do you know he's a jerk? But very few will say, call a telephone. You know what he did? The whole night through, he prayed. I saw him standing in his room, shedding tears the whole night through. At 5 o'clock in the morning, he was still up. What was he praying about? Well, maybe he was repenting. He's a great sinner anyway, so it's good for him to repent. But maybe he was praying for somebody else. This is a dangerous thing that we do. We do not notice goodness and spread about that. But we notice everything bad and we spread about that. We are not evangelizers. Evangelizer is he or she who spreads the good news of God's glory and triumph upon this earth. In the country, we're right the opposite. We spread all kinds of gossip and negative things. My father Adrian once started telling something, and I immediately sort of said, yeah, you know, he's no good, yeah. He jumped at me and said, "Upasiti debo, may God stop you from ever saying things like that about anybody." I said, well, big deal, why can't I say, you know, he's a jerk, huh? Don't. Because you thereby you are multiplying that negativism in the world. In other words, opposite of witnessing or evangelizing. And this is where we all sin. That is, we don't have grandeur or a big heart to see goodness and spread, manifest, inspire others, inform others about that. We don't have. Shiddush. It's this shiddush. It means it's a cheap little soul we got. Well, and very often I insist on the diaries. You know, everybody's supposed to read that simply because there's sometimes a wonderful thing occurs. Somebody does a nice thing or really nice, and we don't record it. We don't say, "Oh, Father Herman, this is a wonderful thing that just happened." We don't say that. We don't get excited, or we do not adhere to that which is godly and which is righteous, and do not do not exalt that which is good and godly. On the contrary, we very often see something negative, and we sort of, first, for polite sake, we're sort of silent. We put it in our heart, in our tiny, jerky little heart, and we put it in, and we lock it up, and then say, "Oh, I knew she's no good. I knew it. It just justifies. Look at the way she stands. Look at the way she sits. No, it's obvious. You know, it's right there." And then something else. "I know. Look at the way she looks at me. Look at the way she walks. Why that slob?" And immediately, it confirms that very negative thing, and it gives money. And then some naive kiddo comes along, you know, thinking about peanuts or something, and all of a sudden he comes in, "You know, he's a jerk. He's no good." And you say it because you already gathered it, you treasured it, you compiled, you packed it up. You have something to give. It's already there. And then you give the strong dose to him. And the poor thing is barely present here, spaced out kid. All of a sudden he's, "Why, I didn't know. Why, that's true. He's absolutely no good. Why?" And I have no respect for him. That's it. I like that expression. You know, "I don't like you anymore. I have no respect for you." Don't let ever that happen. That's not right. We must respect each one because we're created in the image of God. Of course, I'm not here to give you these, you know, to tell you what to do. You have to do it yourself. You have to figure it out. Well, I'm saying that this element of people who love God, who love sanctity, who love goodness, who are willing to spread, sacrifice themselves and all that, those are disappearing. As Father Gerasim in Alaska used to say, the love of Christ is evaporating from the face of this earth is disappearing. That type of people are disappearing, who sit and pray and wish good, conceal the evilness or the fallenness of others, or even take upon themselves. Somebody did something and everybody's ashamed to say, yeah, I did it. And then you're beaten up like Makari the Great. He was, and put to prison or something for actually he had nothing to do with it. He just covered up somebody else's sin. Why don't we have such heroes nowadays? You know why? Very simple. Because each one of us is not in love with God. And because we're not in love with God, we therefore don't see godliness. And we don't see godliness, obviously we don't speak about it. So instead, what do? We watch TV, we have all this terrible, this, we walk a mile, we deserve a break and McDonald's and so on. That's where our heart is. And we're going to be judged for that. God will come and say, you'll come at the gate, the pearly gates, and Peter's going to stand there dangling his keys, and he'll say, what have you done? Well, I fasted Fridays and Saturdays, I didn't eat oil. Well, I ate a little bit of cheese here and there, but what else have you done? Well, I enjoyed movies. I walked a lady in 1952 across the street. I said, well, doesn't seem enough. Jesus died, shed his blood, God himself. For what? For such a miserable phenomenon. Why don't you get lost? Why don't you get lost in infernal fires? Why? When I heard first about this business of infernal fires, I was indignant. How can God, who created everything, God who love, allow hell? How unjust of a loving God. See? And then later on I changed my opinion. I began to read about lives of saints and the righteous ones, and began to notice that these righteous ones, they had that heart filled with such amount of self-sacrificing love. They endured so much that they're willing to. They were so godly that the mere statement of them would change. Like one of them, somebody said about the mountain moved. Mark of Thrace, because only just said that. There's such holiness. And when you are aware of that, then you can understand what paradise is. That those people who are just no-gooders, that they actually will be miserable in the company of those who love God. And not that God deliberately is going to make hell, but they're in the absence of godliness in them will be that hell. Do you understand? The more I read about the saints, the more it became clearer to me that when let's say, if we don't do anything, you already go to hell. And that hell is that very state of not being with God. That will torment you because you're created in the image of God. Because it's odd, it's foreign to you not to be with God, because we're created for God. Therefore, it is, I feel, very important to know what is righteousness. Second, to realize that this righteousness is actually physically disappearing from this face of this earth, especially in this Bay Area. The righteousness is disappearing. And I can tell you why. It's very clear. It's not hard to say. But the third thing was, have I done in order to stop that? Or in order to shed some light? Some people will be, for example, every person who commits sin, every sin is leading a man away from peace in his heart. His conscience begins to bother. This conscience begins to make it uneasy, and he begins to crave something because it's not at peace. You can have a peace through confession, repentance, and then it says, "Atatiya zla itzatvari blaga." Step away from evil and do good. It doesn't say step away from evil and crawl in a hole and be happy. No. It says step away from evil and therefore do something good. Fill up that void with goodness, with godly energy. See? So when we lead that type of life, that is a life that is bound up with sin and various unrighteousness, states of unrighteousness, then we begin to crave something that would fill that void. And usually it is bound up with boredom. Our life becomes boring. The next step after boring, we start craving for shows, all kinds of things that will attract our attention on the superficial level. And then we'll notice that just to show and to sit one's place, just watch, is not interesting. I want to take part in it. I want to wallow in sin. I want to take part in it. And then once you've got into it, you make the act of, you resolve to do the act of sin. Then immediately you become in bonds. You lose freedom. And you become hooked. You become like this, this thing. Addicted. You can't help it. And you are in bonds. You're sitting in prison, like in prison. And then go try. You take a look, some of the people. Take a look, some of the people who are addicted. It's a torture. They find no peace. They are literally sick. And you try to help them. You sort of try to bring them coffee. This and that. Doesn't do anything. But that's because they need uprooting this thing. They need the deep AA. The system of alcoholics. It's a great system. You see clearly that each individual has to make his sound decision. You can't do it for anybody else. It's a question of will. So once the will is turned towards God, and that measuring stick of righteousness is at your hands, and then you begin to, not only you love God, but God begins to love back. The mysterious encounter between the soul and loving, living God, active, vibrant God, begins to work in you. When you have that, then you will not be passive. You will not simply allow everything, what can I do? After all, You won't do that. You will start figuring out what to do to stop it. Or substitute through that emptiness with something goodly, something godly, something that is good, that has a good capital G, that which is of the property of God. And thus, I feel that we, Orthodox Christians in modern times, are not very creative in this realm. We somehow don't find ways to come out and to talk to people. Nowadays, there's no such thing. I know very few people are doing this like a street mission, sort of walking in the streets and praying. Some kind of a dangerous area you come, of course, it's dangerous, that can beat you up, see? But some people would deliberately love to be beaten up because they have God in them. We're just chickens. We don't have enough strength. But to do something godly, we are not creative. We can't find it. When I was converted, I came to various priests with a question: "Что делать? What must I do?" I figured out God. I got God. I received Holy Communion, confession. Okay, I understand what God is. What do I do? He says, молитесь, кайтесь, простите прощения. Well, I've done it. That's not good enough for me. I want more. Then, when you ask them, they say, you must be crazy. And when I went to the monastery, I met the monks there who were just like that. Then I figured, I'm in my milieu. I'm in my dish. In my dish, I'm in the right place. I can feel there people are the same way. But when you come outside, people don't care. Most people don't care. Very often, you have a good example, a good movie. Let's say old-fashioned movie in the 40s and 50s. They made great 30s, great movies. And you watch this, and some of them are stunning movies, well done and very sort of like a piece of reality. And you are touched in something, and because a picture is worth 1,000 words, you know, so therefore it's as a stronger dose than just somebody's little article. And then you sit for 2 hours watching this thing, and well done and with a good message. After that, you're a different person. And then we forget. We haven't taken that as a push towards ourselves. I used to go to the movies, and I would come to them, and I see this junky movie, I would spit right there in the movie theater and go away. Because it's stupid. And sometimes I would sit there glued. I would sit nervous, had to run to the bathroom, and because it was so exciting, such a great, deep message comes across. And I wanted to take that as like an icon from daily life. We don't have saints walking in the street nowadays. Where do you get it? Because all we got is nowadays just movies, really. So I took it, and I worried about this, and I thought about that, wrote about this, and I managed to build in myself a whole sort of a resistance to those things that are so-called neutral, or they're so impersonal that actually takes away our time. What I want to conclude with is this, that it's okay if you don't love God. God still loves you. And it's okay that the world is going to hell. But it's not okay that you're not doing anything about it. It's not okay. Because the church services, the whole church tradition, the icons, the sayings, the hagiography, gives you a big dose. Our society today offers you see many bad things. Get up and do something. For that, it's not okay. Therefore, let us take the opportunity while we're young, energetic. All of you are young, energetic, sort of free individuals, happy, you got good brains, you are inspired once in a while, and you have good books, you got Lives of Sage, you got good books, novels, movies. Fill yourself with these good images and figure out, be creative, figure out how to come out and do good. Do inspire others with that which is godly. And for that, God will kiss you for that and inspire you and give you mystical experience by which it sort of opens up eyes, a mind, by which you can figure out how you, with your personality, your rotten and no good personality, and all of a sudden come up with something great. I won't give you examples because lives of saints are filled with that. And it is expected that you read gospel, daily gospel. It's expected that you go to church once in a while and you listen and read the services and all that. Most of you are churchly people, so you know what I'm talking about. But it's not good enough just to take it in and muffle it. You must take it in and come out with it. Or come out with a creative answer. You must put all your energy and do it while we can. Soon we will not have the opportunity. Because the unrighteous ones will take the government in their hands. As it was in Russia after 1917. Very easy. They took it. And it became unlawful to be Christian. It was unlawful to possess a Bible. It was against the law to cross yourself publicly, to wear like that in the streets. It was against the law. They're persecuted. We saw in Russia what they did. They tried to eliminate the idea of goodness. They only wanted this human element, but human element is not satisfying. To create a better society for what purpose? So we can rot? What's the purpose of that? They'll say, well, if we're a society, have better bathrooms and better lighting, then you'll be better people. Well, it's quite clear the opposite. Do you know that most of the murderers, you know that, they come from good families with nice lighting and good bathrooms? And the poor unfortunate people usually, well, they smite each other and so on out of some kind of a, poor, some little passion here and there. But actually, they are not pampered. They are not ruined. They are not blank, empty, void. They are not vacant. Most of the people are nowadays vacant. They are empty. And what happens to a soul that is empty? 7 devils get in, and then they possess. And now the society here in America, no doubt, is getting into a state of possession. I'm sorry, but there is some truth to it. If you look what they teach in schools and what goes on in you don't have to go far. Go to a youth concert. It's a madness. It's abnormality. It's a madness. What do I mean by normal? That measuring stick is lacking. So anything goes. And therefore they kill themselves, they chop themselves in pieces right in front of everybody. And everyone says, yeah. And somebody comes and starts shooting in the back and says, yeah. And what? Most of the people, Christians, have turned into some kind of a possessed, it's almost like a possession hysteria that can only exist then when there's blank. Most of the people are not bad, but they become vehicles of that movement. And Orthodox Christians have no right to sit there and not do anything. When we see something negative come out and change. There was one man who was traveling in the airplane, a Russian Orthodox man, from Chile to Argentina, was flying. And all of a sudden, some kind of trouble started. And a panic. People started jumping off the seat, and the poor stewardess didn't know how to do some kind of fire or something. And he sat there and thought, judging him, that means that's the end. There's no escape here. We're going to explode any minute right there in the air. And he thought, if that is so, that means my end, my meeting God is at hand. Within minutes, will explode, will be the end of me. What do I do? So he crossed himself and thought, but these stoops are running around loose. They're not thinking about paradise now. They're not thinking at this very moment to encounter Jesus Christ. The end, the angel of death is about to come. They're not doing. They're running around thinking about what kind of mass they get, what to do. So he rose up and said, silence! We have to be silent, because if we make noise, we make the situation worse. But if it is death, let's prepare for it. Let's know what we can do. And let's sit down quietly and start preparing. This is it. Maybe that's it. That's the end. Let us be caught by death in a tranquil, godly state. And he says, at this moment, everybody sat down. Total silence. The stewardess were surprised that there's total peace and quiet. And then whatever they had, they extinguished whatever there was, and they safely returned. And the stewardess came to him and said, tell me, sir, what experience you had in handling mobs? And he says, I never had such situation before. I never faced death like that before. But now that you ask me, all I did is I thought of the hour of death. And it calmed others. So in other words, he was creative at this moment, and he created peace right there, and everybody thanked him. He had the guts in him. So we have to, in face of evil, we have to have guts and bring good. Because most of the people who are evil and dissatisfied, they actually are unfortunate souls. We must love them. We must approach them. We must help them. Make them have peace to face themselves. We are given by God a mind that is hooked to God, godliness. It's a wonderful thing. And thus, on this note, I'll end. Christ is risen.
In truth he is risen.
Christ is risen.
In truth he is risen.
Christ is risen.
In truth he is risen.
All right. Maybe you have somebody might have questions. I have here qualified personnel to answer. Brother Aaron, would you be kind enough to step here? Would you be kind enough to step here? He is a convict. He's dressed like a convict today. He's my copy. And maybe there are some questions you have. I don't have any questions. No, everything seems to be clear, right?
Yeah. You said 3 points, but you spoke so much that I lost the points.
Oh, I'm so sorry. See, I overdid it. See, I always do the same thing with kulichi. I overbake them, all black outside and gooey inside. Simply 3 things. Number 1, lover of truth. Right? Second is that part of that phenomena is in danger, might disappear. And third, you must do something. Get up and do something. That's all I want to say, just 3 points. And what you do, that depends on the measure of your loving God. And he'll answer. If you're a convict, well, you got stuck. Right? But even in that condition, it's possible to do something. Further, you can pray. Most of us are actual convicts. We are actually prisoners of our own passions. See? So, first of all, we humble down. We pray to God. Ask Him to open our stupid minds so we can figure out what to do. And God has mercy on us, and all of a sudden hits you over the head, and stunning idea comes out. How to offer kulichi, coffee to guests. Get the point? All right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Especially in the somewhat murky atmosphere of San Francisco, how can we discern the Holy Spirit from the spirits? I wish there are many these days.
Well, we don't have to do too much discerning because we're not that smart. See? What we can do is exactly what you're doing. You have a little nest, a little nucleus of goodness and belief in God and love for truth and righteousness. Right here. You take care of the poor, you feed them, and so on. Now, the next thing is you have to open up a bookstore. So that people can come in, instead of going through those rags and all those junk you got there, excuse me, to open a bookstore, you have lots of ideas and so on. You have lectures every Thursday. You show good movies. You have a before, and attract those people with something positive. It's true that I might throw bombs into your place, but the same way as here, they wouldn't do that. In other words, you have to put an idea, a philosophic idea, and sell it. Give it out so people accept. What you do here is good, but it's just a Christian charity. And this charity is a limit. There's a limit to it. Because charity is good, but charity, if a person like a bum comes to you and asks for a quarter, so you give him a quarter and he goes and drinks. You, of course, did it for God. But eventually, that drink on your money will get him to hell. You have to give him idea. You have to give an idea. You bombard him with Christian principle ideas. Ideas that work. And a bookstore or reading or something is exceedingly important because there, like we have Mother Nectaria, take her as an example. I don't know if she's here. I'd like to talk behind her back. Well, good. She's not here, so I can talk behind her. She operates our bookstore in Chico. Okay? And people come in, and she is aware of what's happening. She has experience. She knows exactly what that person needs. And she comes, she talks to him, or she doesn't talk to him. She tries to present to him a different idea. And she catches them. She catches a whole pool of these fishes. And that people begin thinking. So that's why I think, that's what you had in mind?
Well, I was asking how there's a lot of spiritualism going on in San Francisco and in America nowadays. And I was trying to see how you can discern between all of these spirits that are around and the Holy Spirit of truth.
Well, I did know a man, but a certain righteous man here in America. In fact, he was even here in San Francisco. He used to tell his disciples go by twos, just like Scripture says, go by twos in the streets and keep on praying. Keep on praying to God and angels and so on. And God will inspire you. When there's trouble, be there. Don't particularly teach or be there, but be there with your prayer. And miracles happen. I have a whole series of events described as real miracles. They didn't do much, but they were praying, they were bringing light into this darkness, actual darkness. And how to discern who is off and what philosophy here follows, that is not up to us. Because let God work. You have guardian angels. That particular person has a guardian angel and also has a demon, guardian demon. So there is this war between those two. And the will of that man determines. So if a man sees you, and you are with your guardian angel, the devil is behind your stamp, then the guardian angel will tell you what to do. And you'll help him out. You'll be able to help him out. Don't get into big discussions. We had very often, a person would come, he would like to big discussions, and very often the big discussion, first of all, he doesn't make any sense, and second, why? I don't want to be on that level. I believe in God, I believe in good, and he obviously needs something. He came and this looks like sour or something. So obviously he needs, so I'm trying to be very nice to him. I give him a cup of coffee, I talk to him, I'm a friend, and then I say, come back again. And he walks around, comes back. Many of them want to argue and angry. And they want to prove something. Then you can see that a person has already a lot of preconceived ideas, and they might conflict with what you say. Therefore, you don't say, just be friend, just be his friend, and well, share whatever you can. Be on a human level. God will open up. The problem is we don't do it. We prefer to sort of start arguments, like we have. Father Pais is an excellent example. Constant argument, see? And then, of course, you get so bored with this argument, see? And finally the man says, oh, and walks through, stumps out of it. You have a question?
It was very similar to Kate's. In speaking to someone, they said, well, everybody says that they know what's right, but nobody can know what is right.
It's true. That's very true. You know what it is? It's the heart that knows. And let's say if he has a set of ideas that he thinks is right, then you will argue with him, right? But you can be still friend. So you can argue and you have your own position. But if he is saying that statement, that means he's neutral. Because he wants you to be also to say, well, there is no truth. See? And if there's no truth, then anything goes. Then might as well I can go and kill you. There's no truth. I don't take it. In fact, I'll get pleasure of squeezing. See? And that is hurting you and actually hurting my conscience and society. Then we have to pay the taxes for the policemen and that. So that's not very positive. So therefore, if a person already has that attitude, talk to him on a different level. Make him see not what you preach, but what you are. Because what you preach is, since you're fallen too. Like one of my prayers is, Mother Nectar doesn't have that prayer, but I have the prayer, when a person comes to my store, the first thing I say, oh God, protect him from me. Because I can say, stupid things might hurt him. God protect him from me. I mean well, but I might say something, some stupid thing that might actually hurt him. Protect that fellow from the sins and evils and stupidity that I have. And it worked. He sees that I'm not much, there's not much to me, I'm just a human being, 2 nostrils, 2 legs, and 1 nose, and just like him, and we can talk, we have maybe interesting subjects, we discuss weather is always a nice subject to discuss. Right? Don't get too politics, because politics then this politics is actually fashions, see? And I don't go for fashions too much, see? I think it's dangerous. Yes? Oh, yeah? Oh, just scratching. Yeah. You're just scratching. Any other question? Excellent, no questions. Now, I'd like to say a few words to the young generation. I have here one of the fellows here who's interested in psychology. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Psychology. It's a very interesting subject, because the word psychology means psyche, which means the soul. See? And all of us have a soul. Our contemporary psychology is maybe the very latest phenomena is interested very much in the soul, but so far it's bound up with actual physiology more than psychology. And because they do not deal with too much with the soul, anyway, the way the Holy Fathers teach, the patristic concept of soul. And our society today is lacking this. We are made out of body, soul, and spirit. Spirit is a higher aspect of the soul. So we have bodily knowledge, bodily music, bodily concept, and so on. Then we have that of the soul, like soul food and so on and so on. And then we have that of the spirit, spiritual things, see? So the element of the soul is very often forgotten by us. We do not say, like in our church services, we often hear the statement, rejoice, O my soul, or awake, my soul. We rarely address our soul. We rarely think that we possess a living soul. And the soul was created in the image of God and is eternal. We somehow don't treasure that. The psychologist sort of approaches that, but it goes into this labyrinth of physiology and various sort of traditions and all kind of things. But from philacalic wisdom, the soul, us, we Christians today, do not care. There's expression with dusha popechenia. There's Russian expression, means caring of a soul. A spiritual father is dusha popechитель. It means a man who takes care of the soul. Every person has a godfather. He is your dusha popechитель. A person who is, for example, when you die, takes care of your will. How does it call it? Executive. But executive of the soul. He's going to take care of your soul. Do you have one? No. Do you? No. We don't think about that. But it's very important that we have a living soul, and we're supposed to take care of it. So I suggest that we read spiritual texts, and sort of, as one man said, one righteous man said, we must finally, we must encounter our own soul. There is a case. There was one seminarian who went to seminary, and he was a good kiddo. He finished very nicely and so on. He was a talented fellow, and he was almost graduation ball. I mean, there was a graduation ball, and he couldn't decide what to do with himself. He was interested in a career. He was a smart boy. He could go this way or that way, and maybe he would become a priest, but he's got to have a wife, and it's not that simple. You have to find a nice girl. Or maybe he'll be a doctor, maybe he'll do this. He wasn't decided. Although he finished seminary, he didn't know. And so he went to the ball, and graduation ball, and then of course he had this lovely charmer, and he danced with her and all this, and he saw that she's a lovely thing, but she's far from that dilemma as to what to do with his life. And so he had a top hat, he had the last century, it was the beginning of this century. And so he came home, and he rented a room, see? He came home, and it was late already, the party still had a little champagne, he felt nice, and he came open the door, the vestibule, and there is, a mirror. You're supposed to hang it, put your hat on, an umbrella, and he comes in there, and takes the hat, is about to put it, and all of a sudden he sees himself in the mirror. And he never really got used to seeing himself in tuxedo, with a nice mustache here. He was too busy studying, and so all of a sudden, in front of him stands himself. So he says, what a stoop. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with you? Here I finished seminary. I don't know where to go, what to do. what do I want to do? Why don't I go to Japan? And all of a sudden he hears, why not becoming a missionary to Japan? And he left and became St. Nicholas of Japan. See, in other words, there's a moment he all of a sudden encountered, he saw himself. He encountered his soul, where there is this weirdo standing with a mustache, and that's supposed to be you. What is that supposed to be? Why not do something? What could be a wonderful thing? Well, be apostle to Japan. And he became. Now he's a saint of Japan. Saint Kasatki, Nicholas of Kasatki. See? So we must encounter. And another thing the fathers say is that beware. Not beware. Because if you will not meet Jesus in this life, if you will not meet him, encounter, become friends of his, become his acquaintance, then when you die, when the real live Jesus will come out, you might not recognize him. And you'll lose eternity. Just think about it. That's a scary thing. We follow Typicon here. We have Typicon experts sitting all in a row. See, great experts. You know all the Typicon and all this, right? But do you know Jesus Christ? It's interesting. In Scripture, there's a fascinating thing. These people were doing all things in his name, and all of a sudden Jesus says, I know you not. Go to hell. I don't know you. And here they were made miracles in his name. He says, I beg your pardon. They said, I beg your pardon, Jesus. I was making miracles in your name. I was, bibbidi bobbidi boo, it worked. And you don't know. I know you not. Go you to hell. How come? It's because you didn't see yourself in the mirror. You didn't see your soul. You did not encounter your own soul. You're a foreigner to your soul. Pushkin said a statement. He said, lucky are those who have serce s razum of Vladu, who have heart and mind are in friendship, friendly relationship. Most of us, we don't. Could that be a man having a soul and a heart together, and the soul is the deserts? Something didn't go wrong there. The muffler fell off. The desert, give me the soul, shove it up into pieces. It's clearly that his soul was a foreigner to him. He doesn't know him. And then all of a sudden he looks, and when the last day comes out of the body, the soul, the angel of death, comes out, and says, that's me. Well, I'm ashamed. I don't know. What a shocking thing. All right. So therefore, let us always be with Jesus Christ, with the resurrected Jesus, and meet our soul and rejoice that God gives you life, that he feeds you, he sends warmth, and he makes you such a nice people. You walk on 2 feet and you see things, sometimes with spectacles, sometimes without spectacles. You see, you can hear music, you can make something out of your life. Well, make it. Don't goof. We got too many goofies around anyway. All right, that's it.